It's June 18th, 2020. You're a German retiree. You've spent decades saving carefully. Pension contributions, modest investments, a retirement fund you built euro by euro over a working lifetime. A few years ago, your financial advisor recommended Wirecard, a German technology company, a payment processing giant, a member of the prestigious DAX index, Germany's equivalent of the Dow Jones, the kind of company that belongs in a retirement portfolio. You trusted your advisor. You trusted the DAX. You trusted Germany's financial regulators. You wake up on June 18th and check your portfolio. Wirecard stock has collapsed overnight. Not declined, not corrected, collapsed, down nearly 80% in a single day. By the end of the week, it will file for insolvency. Your investment is essentially worthless. And the reason it collapsed? Auditors at Ernst & Young, one of the most prestigious accounting firms in the world, has just announced that they cannot locate $2 billion in cash that was supposed to be sitting in accounts in the Philippines. Not a discrepancy, not an accounting error. $2 billion simply not there. It was never there. The company that Germany called its answer to Silicon Valley, the fintech giant that was going to put Europe on the global payments map, had been lying for years. And the journalist who tried to warn everyone? He spent 5 years being treated like a criminal for telling the truth. Markus Braun was born in Vienna, Austria in 1969. He was quiet, methodical, and possessed of an almost religious conviction that technology was going to transform the world. He joined Wirecard in 2002 when it was a small, struggling payment processor. Within a few years, he had become the CEO and the largest shareholder. And then he began reinventing himself. He started wearing black turtlenecks, exclusively, deliberately. The same Steve Jobs uniform that Elizabeth Holmes had adopted. The visual shorthand for visionary genius. He spoke about Wirecard not as a payment company, but as a technology platform, a data business, an AI-driven financial ecosystem that was going to revolutionize how money moved around the world. He was tall, intense, and spoke with the kind of quiet certainty that makes people lean forward in their chairs. Investors lean forward. Between 2002 and 2018, Wirecard stock rose from almost nothing to over 190 euros per share. The company was valued at more than 24 billion euros, making it more valuable than Deutsche Bank, one of Germany's most storied financial institutions. In 2018, Wirecard joined the DAX, Germany's most prestigious stock index. It was a moment of national pride. Germany had its own fintech giant. Europe had its answer to PayPal, to Stripe, to the American payment companies that had dominated global finance. Markus Braun was celebrated, treated as a national champion. Inside the company, a small group of executives were frantically moving numbers around fake accounts, hoping nobody would notice. Wirecard's business model was genuinely complex, which is partly what made the fraud so easy to hide. The company processed payments for merchants around the world. It had legitimate operations. It had real customers. It generated real revenue, but not enough real revenue. The gap between what Wirecard actually earned and what it told its investors it earned was enormous and growing every year. To bridge that gap, Wirecard's executives invented a network of fictitious business partners, companies in Asia, particularly in the Philippines and Singapore, that supposedly processed payments on Wirecard's behalf. These partners supposedly held vast amounts of cash in trust accounts, money that appeared on Wirecard's balance sheet as assets. In 2020, the supposed balance in these accounts was $2 billion. The accounts didn't exist. The partners didn't exist. The cash didn't exist. Ernst & Young, Wirecard's auditor for over a decade, had signed off on these accounts year after year. The firm had relied on confirmations from a single third-party bank that the accounts existed rather than independently verifying them. For 10 years, one of the world's most prestigious accounting firms had been auditing phantom assets. The man orchestrating much of this was not Braun himself, at least not directly. His chief operating officer, Jan Marsalek, was the architect of the faked Asian partnerships. Marsalek was charming, multilingual, connected to intelligence services across multiple countries, and almost certainly a spy for Russian intelligence alongside his role as a fraudster. He is also, like J-Lo, still a fugitive. Until just recently. He vanished the day before Wirecard's fraud was publicly confirmed. He has just recently been spotted. In September 2025, an international team of journalists finally found him. He was strolling through Moscow, relaxed, sunglasses on, holding his girlfriend's hand, living under a false identity as a Russian intelligence asset. Interpol wants him. Germany wants him. He's going nowhere. Dan McCrum was a financial journalist at the Financial Times in London. In 2014, he received a tip about Wirecard. Something didn't add up about the company's accounts. The margins were too high. The business in Asia was too profitable. The numbers didn't make sense when compared to competitors. He started investigating. What followed was 5 years of the most extraordinary and at times terrifying experience in modern financial journalism. McCrum published his first critical piece about Wirecard in 2015. The response from Wirecard was immediate and overwhelming. The company hired lawyers. It threatened legal action. It commissioned reports from a consulting firm suggesting McCrum's sources were engaged in market manipulation. German regulators, the BaFin, investigated, not Wirecard, McCrum. German authorities opened a criminal investigation into the Financial Times journalist for allegedly helping short sellers manipulate Wirecard's stock price. Read that again. A journalist investigating a fraud was criminally investigated. The company committing the fraud was not. BaFin, the regulator whose entire job was to protect German investors, actually banned short selling in Wirecard stock in 2019. Investors betting that Wirecard stock would fall, investors who turned out to be completely correct, were restricted from doing so by the government. McCrum kept going. He and his colleagues at the Financial Times continued publishing, document after document, source after source, each piece chipping away at Wirecard's carefully constructed facade. Wirecard continued to deny everything. Its stock actually rose after some of McCrum's articles as investors and German regulators chose to believe the company over the journalists. In April 2020, the Financial Times published a bombshell, a document suggesting that a substantial portion of Wirecard's revenues from its Asian operations were fictitious. This time, Ernst & Young couldn't find the $2 billion. 2 months later, Wirecard was finished. On June 18, 2020, Wirecard announced that Ernst & Young had refused to sign off on its accounts because $2 billion in cash could not be located. The stock collapsed. 12 billion euros in market value evaporated in days. On June 22nd, Wirecard filed for insolvency, the first DAX company to ever do so. Markus Braun was arrested on June 22nd. He sat in custody for months before being released on bail. His trial began in 2022 and is one of the longest, most complex fraud trials in German history. Jan Marsalek, the COO, the architect of the fake Asian accounts, the suspected Russian spy, had already disappeared. He is believed to be in Russia and remains one of the most wanted fugitives in Europe. BaFin, the regulator that had invested McCrum instead of Wirecard, that had banned short selling to protect a fraudulent company, faced enormous criticism. Its president eventually resigned. Ernst & Young faced legal action from investors and questions about how it failed to independently verify $2 billion in cash for a decade. And the investors, the German retirees, the pension funds, the ordinary shareholders who had trusted the DAX, trusted the regulators, trusted the auditors, lost billions. I want to stay with the investors for a moment, because the Wirecard story just isn't about a fraudulent company. It's about the failure of every system that was supposed to protect ordinary people from exactly this kind of fraud. The auditors failed. Ernst & Young signed off on phantom accounts for a decade. The regulators failed. BaFin investigated the journalists instead of the company and banned short selling to protect a fraud. The index providers failed. Wirecard was allowed into the DAX, Germany's most prestigious index, despite years of credible questions about its accounts. The banks failed. Major financial institutions provided credit to Wirecard without the adequate due diligence. Every layer of protection that exists between ordinary investors and corporate fraud failed simultaneously. Dan McCrum and his colleagues at the Financial Times were the only people doing their jobs, and they were investigated for it. McCrum eventually won the Gerald Loeb Award, the most prestigious prize in financial journalism, for his Wirecard coverage. He wrote a book about the experience called Money Men. The recognition was deserved, but it came after 5 years of legal threats, criminal investigations, and the deeply unsettling experience of being treated as the criminal while the actual criminals were celebrated as national champions. Every fraud has an architect, but Wirecard teaches us something that none of our previous stories quite captured. The fraud itself, the fake accounts, the phantom cash, was not uniquely sophisticated. Auditors should have caught it. Regulators should have caught it. The red flags were there for anyone willing to look. The reason it lasted so long wasn't the brilliance of the deception. It was the institutional desire to believe. Germany wanted Wirecard to be real. Regulators wanted it to be real. The DAX wanted it to be real. Investors wanted it to be real. The entire country had invested emotionally, reputationally, nationally in the idea that Germany had produced a world-class fintech company. That desire to believe became the shield that protected the fraud for years. Dan McCrum was threatening something that people didn't want threatened, so they went after him instead. The lesson for every investor is this: the institutions designed to protect you are not infallible. Regulators get it wrong. Auditors get it wrong. Index providers get it wrong. Government investigations get it wrong. The only protection you have is your own critical thinking, your own willingness to ask hard questions, your own refusal to believe something just because authority figures tell you to. Dan McCrum asked hard questions for 5 years while the entire establishment told him to stop. He was right. They were wrong. Jan Marsalek? He's been spotted strolling through Moscow in July 2025. Sunglasses on, girlfriend's hand in his, completely relaxed. Interpol has a red notice. Germany wants him. He is living openly under a false name of Alexander Neladov as a Russian intelligence asset. He walks free. Next week, we are going inside WorldCom, the telecommunications giant that has committed the biggest accounting fraud in American history. Bigger than Enron, more brazen than Wirecard, and almost completely forgotten. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and I will see you Friday.